3 years ago, would you have ever imagined having 2 dogs and a wife?
The place was packed, and this little lady forced her way down the pew, tripped over my brolly and slumped in the seat next to me. And that was Julia. Out of 200 people in the church, she sat next to me.
Well, my name's Julia. A lot of people call me Jules. I'm currently semi-retired, I suppose, but I'm an ordained priest in the Church of England. Now I'm living in Sussex with Graham, my husband, who is a vicar.
I'm Graham. I'm a vicar.
Also a vicar. Well, I only became a Christian in my 30s anyway. My approach to a Christian relationship was very different from how I had approached relationships before that, which frankly was pretty messy. And in fact, I was engaged in my 20s and that ended badly with me discovering that he'd been unfaithful.
What I should tell you is that I was at the time going out with Marilyn when I became a Christian, and I persuaded her to come to church with me. And when she told her parents, they threw her out the house. So we got married at the age of 20. So I'd never really had that sort of early tangle of relationship. We were thrown together at a very early age and married at a very early age. She was very ill. She had very severe rheumatoid arthritis and was basically crippled with it and in constant, intense pain. So she would cry all night. She'd make me sleep in another room where I couldn't hear her when I was at home. The doctors said otherwise she would live to an old age. And one night I sat with her, she was crying, and I just prayed, Lord, please put an end to this. And 2 weeks later, she just dropped dead.
I just thought I had to have a plan. You know, it's sort of fixation, isn't it, that you have to have a plan, and it's in our culture. What's your 5-year plan? They always ask you when you go for a job interview and that sort of thing. So if I had a plan, I felt safe. But my issues were much deeper, and it was more to do with low self-esteem and not really believing that I was worth very much, and that was sort of exacerbated by what had happened to me in the relationship. And although I'd kind of got over Harry, I was channeling all my energies into finding a man, really, and disaster.
We went through our journey of marriage and we realised that we'd each actually been married to about a dozen people, because when we got married, we changed. When I started work, I changed. When Marilyn had her first baby, she changed. And of course, when we became Christians, we changed. We had to fall in love with a new person each time.
Finding God was the most important thing for me, really, because finding God just sorted me out as a person, made me realise where I'd been going wrong with so many things, you know, looking for sort of contentment and purpose and meaning in the wrong things, really thinking that another human being could be the answer to all those desires. And you go into a relationship with that, it's always going to be difficult. So I think I joined a couple of the Christian ones, online ones, but then there's nobody ever in your area, you know. So I'd kind of given up for a while. I was getting on with my job and enjoying being a university chaplain, and then I think I just happened to see Songs of Praise. I'm sure it was on Songs of Praise or something else. I heard it mentioned anyway, and so it was months after that, and I was talking about it with my 2 lodgers who were young students, and I said, "Oh, have you heard of this thing?" And one of them had heard of Salt. So I thought, I think I'll give it a go. So anyway, I signed up, and they were about 10 people, and no. And then, I don't know, a few weeks later, can't remember exactly when it was, I noticed that I got a message from somebody.
I'd been sent some leaflets about it and to give to the congregation, and I thought, well, I'm not going to give them without checking it out. And you have to log in, you have to basically, to do anything, you have to form a profile, which I did. And I'll be honest, I hated it. For somebody of my age, this sort of, what was it? It was crossing a heart or something, you know. You think, it's a picture and a few basic details, and to me it was like, I don't know, seeing a car in Auto Trader. You know, I don't know why. I had the app on my phone still, and I thought, I pressed the button and Julia's picture came up. And we connected. Did she tell you this story?
I mean, you've met Graham, you know he can talk, so he was sending me quite lengthy emails, and about 4 days later he was away for the weekend.
And I mentioned that I was on a walking holiday. I was visiting the Morgan car factory in the morning, very important, and then I was going to take a lazy way home, visiting all the villages and towns I'd never managed to visit in my work.
He sent me a long email and some photos of where he was, and I said, oh, I've got to go to a funeral.
She replied saying, oh, I've got a ghastly day tomorrow. I've got to go to a funeral in godforsaken place miles away called Lechlade. And I thought, that's the first place I'm visiting.
And he said, oh, I think I'm driving through Lechlade. I said, oh, well, OK, well, let's meet for lunch. Because he lived way down in Sussex and I was up in Essex. So, it was a long way apart, really. So anyway, off I drove to this funeral, and it was a filthy day and the traffic was awful. And so I stopped at services and I just sent him a text message and said, oh, I'm going to be late for the funeral, so we'll just have to cancel and we'll do it another time.
She got stuck on the M25. I had a brainwave, go and get a service sheet so I could send it to her. And as I came out, the mourners came in and I got swept into the church. And basically I couldn't get out, and I thought, oh, well, I'll sit and I'll make notes of this funeral. It was ghastly. It was unbelievably boring.
So anyway, I turn up at Lechlade 15 minutes late, find a parking space miraculously, quickly dive into the church late, The funerals, anyway, it was terrible, but that's another story.
Partway through the service, all the people who'd been stuck on the M25 came in. The place was packed, and this little lady forced her way down the pew, tripped over my brolly and slumped in the seat next to me. And that was Julia. Out of 200 people in the church, she sat next to me.
Immediately after the funeral, I suddenly became aware that there was somebody sort of hovering at my elbow, and I kind of took a glance like this, and I thought, oh, could be Graham? And sure enough, it was. And so we went off to the wake together, which was quite funny because I didn't know anybody. So we just chatted and talked for about an hour and a half non-stop. Got on really well. And I said, oh, should we do this again? Graham said, yeah, yes, please. 3 years ago, would you have ever imagined having 2 dogs and a wife? And there was a silence. I mean, one of the things that it has been unusual for me, I suppose, is coming into an established family. That's been probably more difficult than I thought it was going to be. And it's quite hard to get to know people because we always meet in very large gatherings. There's always a lot of banter, family banter, which is the culture of the family, which is a bit different from my family. Obviously every family is different. It's going to be hard for me to get to know them.
And COVID hasn't helped.
COVID hasn't helped.
Probably only seen them a
handful of times, yes.
Yeah.
And, you don't have the opportunity for the sort of one-to-one conversations over the washing up or something like that, because we just haven't had those opportunities where those things might have happened. But apart from that, I mean, I think that's the only thing that's been difficult. And as I say, it's not exactly been that difficult because we've hardly seen them.
My reflection is it was all prepared for us rather than... So it's been more a case of just getting on with it rather than sort of, oh gosh, what do we do now? And so I sort of, that sense of the Lord just having it's an arranged marriage is, I think, how I felt.
I would just say get on with living and following your vocation, as I talked about earlier, in terms of whatever it is God's given you to do for today. You're single for today, you're probably single for tomorrow, looking at the diary, and possibly for the next week or two. But beyond that, it's up to God, it's in God's hands. And I think once I got into that kind of mindset, that was much more helpful than having that ridiculous plan. I had to have a plan, that was very enslaving, really. And I think God doesn't want us to be slaves. He wants us to be free, free to love him and to love life. And if you're constantly wanting something else, you're missing out on the joys of today.
Linking onto what Julia's just said, enjoy the life God has given you today, because I was in that thing of I need someone, and it was destroying me. It was only when I came to the very clear decision that if I was going to be single for the rest of my life, that was okay. Accepting that, if that's God's will, that is the best place to be. But also, if God has prepared somebody for you, accepting your current status means that when the Lord brings you together, that will be the right person. If you're desperate for a car, never go and buy a car on the day you're desperate, because you'll buy the wrong one and you'll regret it. Whereas actually just sort of praying about it and then finding the right one that is perfect for you and that your feet fit and everything else fits and it suits your lifestyle, boom, and you're away. Yes, you're a very good buy, dear.
I'm very economic to run as well, aren't I?
Well, apart from the accessories.